Hi, everybody. I'm Elliot Silver. I'm the publisher of domaininvesting.com, and I recently rebranded my blog from elliotsblog.com, which was started in 2007, to domaininvesting.com a couple of weeks ago in October of 2013. One of the biggest concerns that I had with rebranding was losing the traffic from Google, and I wanted to work with somebody who would allow me to kind of retain the traffic and hopefully optimize um, the the website both for people who are reading my blog and for people who are seeing it in Google and Bing. About 6 months ago, I was out in Las Vegas at the traffic conference, and I called my friend Braden Pollock, who invited me to lunch with Jason Hennessey of Everspark Interactive. So I was free, so I went over, and we ended up having lunch for a couple of hours, and we were just discussing SEO, web development, domain names, and really just kind of chatting about everything. And when I spoke with Braden about Jason after the conference, he said, anytime you have an SEO project, get in touch with him. His company's great, and they do a lot of on-site and off-site SEO work. So when I decided to rebrand to domaininvesting.com, Jason was one of the first people I called because I rely on Google and Bing for a decent amount of traffic. I think it's somewhere around 50 to 60% of the traffic to my blog comes from those two search engines. So I really wanted to make sure that everything that was done by the book, and the optimization was done correctly. So I've since rebranded, and traffic has actually improved in the last week or so. I haven't done much analysis to see whether it's as a result of the efforts that Jason and his team did, but I was very, very happy with the results. So as part of the series on rebranding, I am speaking with Jason today to go over some of the things that he and his team did to make sure that Elliot's blog transitioned very seamlessly to domaininvesting.com. And I'm here today to discuss all of that with Jason. So welcome, Jason. Thank you for taking the time to talk with my audience and to let us know what you did to help me with the rebranding.
So okay, so about your site. So let's talk about the steps that we took, because it's really important to make sure that you do it right from the start. You don't want to second guess anything, as you said. And I'm gonna share my screen here so that everybody can kind of see what we're doing. So let's hold on one second. Share screen. All right, and start. Okay, so are you seeing my screen right now?
Yeah, I'm seeing your screen right now.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the first thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to take a deep crawl of your site. We use third-party tools. We also have some proprietary tools that we use so that we can actually crawl the site as though we are a search engine like Google, and we can kind of see everything that's happening in the background. We can see redirects. We can see any errors that exist on the site. We can see any pages, like 404 pages that are out there that you might not know about. We can also look at pages that you're linking to that might no longer exist. That when Google crawls the website and it lands on these 404 pages, creating what is known as like a dead end, you're wasting Google's resources. So therefore, you want to make sure that you clean that stuff up. So this is a document that we created, and it probably took about 8 to 10 hours to realistically crawl the website and then put together what this is, and this is just our recommendations. So the first thing that we do is, we look at everything, literally everything, because there's certain websites out there that, they might even have like a robots tag on the homepage that says, do not index, and if you don't know that, we've seen that before. So you prevent Google from seeing certain parts of your website. You're aware of that.
Yeah.
So, that's some of the things that we look at. We also look at some of the internal linking structure to make sure that, that the pages are linking correctly, any 404 pages. We also look at like soft 404 pages. A soft 404 page, like you had one of those and you probably didn't even know about it. that's where your page loads, and it looks like it's it's serving up a 200 response level, which means that the page is good. But in the background, it's not really serving up because it's called a soft 404. So we look at things like that. Other things that we look at too, there's a whole bunch of errors that were happening with your site as well. That some of them we even had to go off and research. Let me see if I could find the error report here. So here it is. So here's all the different errors that we saw happening with your website. So 302 is just redirects. Those are kind of common. And looked like there was 99 of those on your site that we had to, work with your developers to make sure that we fix those with the new rebranding and the new relaunch. You had some 400 level errors. Those are the bad ones. It looks like you had, there was some. Looks like, I don't know, maybe 1,500 different 400 level errors that were happening on the site that, your team had then gone off and fixed. And then some of these 500 errors, these really have to do more with the server. And there was a couple of those that we also fixed up. So, when you start to add all these up, looks like there was almost 1,500 different errors that were happening even before you decided to relaunch and rebrand, right? So that was good that we found those.
And those also, just to add, a lot of those errors were things I've never even noticed. I had no idea that there were problems like that existing on the website. So in addition to making it better for Google, it's also making user experiences better for people who visit the website.
That's it, right. That's exactly right. Yep. So we just got cut off. We apologize, but we're back. Where we left off, you were talking about, that you didn't even know that some of these errors existed, 1,500 of them, and it was creating a bad user experience for some of your users, not to mention all of the other harm that it was doing with the crawlers and the bots when they came and visited your website, right?
Definitely. It was something I've never even noticed before and probably would never have noticed. So there was not only harm from an SEO perspective, but also from a user experience perspective.
Correct. Yep. So what you're looking at here, again, this was just the summary tab of the different errors and the definitions of all the different errors. Because one of the things that we like to do at Everspark is, and you probably can vouch for this, is we don't want to just talk in technical terms so that you don't understand what we're doing. We like to educate our audience and our customers so that they truly understand and appreciate what we're doing, and they can look out for stuff like that in the future. So this is right here just us educating, Elliot about the different servers and what they mean and the impact and how to fix this stuff moving forward, even without us. So that's something that we did. This was also something that was happening. So these are a lot of the internal redirects. So looks like there was 99 internal redirects where, where Elliot might have linked to something where that page no longer exists. And there was like a 301 redirect happening. So the page that he was linking to doesn't exist anymore, right? If you follow. However, it's redirecting to a new page, right? So we want to get rid of that middle link and just link directly to the new page, right? So that was really important because you had a lot of that stuff, and it was kind of like bleeding some of the page rank in the wrong way.
Definitely. And a lot of the fixes I think that were made really had no impact on how people visualize the site at all, but it was really there was just a lot of kind of bad stuff happening in the back end that served no purpose and was more harmful than anything.
That's right.
So cleaning that stuff up.
That's right. So enough about the errors. I mean, you can see here is like 3 pages here about recommendations on how we wanted to fix that. Then, for the most part, your URL structure was pretty clean. So, I mean, you probably had some kind of a plugin that, that did it and turned the URLs into an SEO-friendly URL. So for the most part, there wasn't really too much happening there. One of the recommendations that we made, it looked like you had numbers on the back end of your URLs. And it was come to find out that the reason why you did that was because you wanted to get into the Google News feed, and that was a requirement, right?
Correct. And they changed that in the last couple of years. And if you have a Google News specific sitemap that works, they'll read right from the sitemap, and the numbers don't have to be there. I did find out recently that for some reason there's been an error on my Google News sitemap. So I started re-adding numbers for the last week or so just to make sure, last couple of weeks, just to make sure that Google was indexing the articles as they came out. I recently changed the sitemap to the Yoast News sitemap, so that error should be rectified. Actually haven't tested it out. I haven't tested it out yet because it was just done a couple of days ago. But according to Webmaster Tools, they've re-indexed my sitemap, or they found the sitemap. So I'll probably test it out over the weekend to see if they read articles that are that don't have the URL, that don't have numbers in the URLs.
Great. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, and Google always constantly making changes like that, where you think you're working best practice, and then best practice changes, and little did you know that the best practice changed. So yeah, that happens all the time.
And
So
one thing I want to add, just to interject really quickly, is that I appreciated when your team showed me some of the Google best practices to changing a URL. I thought that was pretty helpful in giving me some advice and guidance on what certain things meant and what I had to do and the order I had to do them in. That was appreciated because obviously if Google has a list of best practices to follow, it's wise to heed those best practices and to follow their advice.
that's right. Yep, no problem. Yeah, that's, again, we're all about kind of educating, our customers, and we put out a lot of video that does that too, even on our own site. So, and I don't want to get too much into the details about every specific recommendation that we made here, but you can see that it's a pretty thorough audit, and we kind of go into everything. Even page speed, like a lot of times people don't realize how important page speed is on their site. That's one of the things that they neglect. And if you think about it, Google is all about creating a good user experience. And the moment that somebody does a search for something like domain investing, and they find your website, and if your website takes 2, 3, 4 seconds to load, well, that's a bad user experience, because in most cases people don't want to wait that long for your site to render, and they're just going to click back and go to the next one. Well, Google's keeping tabs of all of that, and they're eventually going to give you some leniency until the point where if it happens over and over again, they're just going to push you off to the second and third page and create a better user experience by publishing other sites that are quicker to respond. So, yeah, very important. So again, this is the SEO recommendations that we created. We talked about the errors. Also, this here was a template that we created so that you can basically, because it's really hard for you to go out and write title tags for, golly, 40,000 pages and meta descriptions for 40,000 pages. So instead, we created a template that you should be using so that it's just dynamically generated each time that you create a new blog post. So that this is just a template that we created. And this right here, this is probably one of the most important documents is the mapping. And I think it's right here, yeah. So this is the remapping. So again, what we had to do here is once we took the crawl of the site, we had to take all of your old URLs, right? So you had, golly, let's see here. There's probably over 10,000 URLs, right? So we had to take every one of those URLs and then remap it to a new URL on domaininvesting.com. And then through the htaccess file is we had to apply a 301 redirect so that you don't lose any of the value. And when Google comes and crawls the site again, it recognizes that the new page, you're telling Google that the new page used to be here, but it's now over here, and to index it and to also pass all of the old legacy links that are pointing to that URL too, right? So all the SEO value you want to link over as well. So go ahead.
Obviously, that's a critical element because my blog had been established for over 6 years, and there's all sorts of content, all sorts of links from various websites, and if I lost those, it'd be basically starting from scratch. Even though I've got thousands of articles, it's if there are no links coming in, Google would probably look at it as a brand new website. So it was critical that I maintain those links not only for traffic but also for authority. Just getting the authority from Google and Bing to transfer over to the new website.
And a lot of times when people do this, they don't realize the effects that has. They just say, "Hey, I'm just gonna rebuild my website. I'm gonna change the URL and all the." But if you don't do this right, if you miss half of your pages and they're not redirecting correctly, or if you're using the wrong redirect, like you can use the 302 redirect and it doesn't pass any value. So there's all kinds of different things that could easily get missed, which is why it's kind of important to consult with, maybe you have a friend or something that knows a little bit about SEO. You always don't want to go at it alone. You want to definitely get advice when you're doing that.
I agree with you 100%. And one thing which was nice about working with you guys was that you were working with my developer as well,
Mm-hmm.
and you gave good instructions that made it easy and less complicated to understand, at least from my perspective, and I'm sure from my developer's perspective as well. And also, it was nice to be able to work with GoDaddy and their hosting team, because some of the changes I had to make and adapt were things that they were able to help me handle, and it was good to be able to work in conjunction with all of you guys. And I think that's also something that's important that people should know, is that you might work with an independent optimization company, an independent developer, an independent hosting company, but you really need to have all of these elements working together to make sure that everything is done as specified. Because if I'm not that technical of a person, and if I misinterpret one of Jason's instructions, for example, and give that to my developer, I could really throw things off and make things more complicated and
Mm-hmm.
damage the site. So when I started out, I was really one of the smartest things I think I did was make sure that everyone was in contact with each other, everyone that was important to the change and the rebranding, that they knew how to reach each other, and if there were any questions at all, I knew that my hosting team at GoDaddy could reach out to Jason. I knew my developer could reach out to Jason, and that was helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. Let me see here. I'm going to make you full screen here again, if I could. Let's see here. So, and then one of the other things too that was really important with this transition was that you had a SSL throughout the site, right? So you had basically multiple instances of a lot of your pages, which in effect was causing both a cannibalization problem with Google, where you have two pages competing with each other, but it was also creating a duplicate content issue as well. That was very important that we had to address and fix. So again, little things like that come up. It's very important that you make sure that you fix that stuff.
Definitely, and that was something that was occurring before, and I didn't really know how to address that. And it's still an issue to a degree, but I've got it forwarding correctly now. I've got 301 set up, and hopefully Google will de-index those HTTPS pages from Elliot's blog and give the authority and links to domaininvesting.com.
Got
So
it.
still in progress. So unfortunately, I mean, as you know, it's not an exact science with Google, and you guys have it down to a T, and you guys know how to make these changes, but it's not. It's you can't call Google on the phone and say, hey, I want these HTTPS Elliot's blog pages moved to domain investing and eliminate Elliot's blog from Google without causing any potential damage. I mean, you can't do that.
No.
So you kind of rely on them to make these changes, and you have to do certain things to kind of get them to address certain things. So that was helpful.
So yeah, that's it. I mean, we really kind of hammered, just most of your site integrity, your on-page. We didn't really have to do any type of off-page audit, again, because most of your links are just natural links. You never hired a link builder in another country to start building links for you to try to manipulate your search engines,
Exactly, and that's one of the things that sorry, it froze up.
No problem.
All right. So yeah, I never hired anybody to do any links. I've been fortunate to get articles in various publications linking back to my website, and I've always focused on writing the content for this this website, so I've never really had to deal with Google penalties for having unnatural links.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing about the domain industry is that there are a number of people who write articles about the domain name industry, bloggers, forums, various websites that have outbound links, and it's sort of a tight community. So I was able to email a number of people who have links to my website and ask them, hey, can you update my URL? And it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
With other websites of mine, it would be more difficult because I don't know them personally in many cases. So emailing somebody who's written about my blog or a blog or a website that I don't know personally, it's hard to get them to go back and take the time to make a change that isn't going to impact them one way or the other. But with the domain space, I was able to reach out to those people.
Yeah.
So it was really the biggest thing for me with the rebranding was really on-site optimization and making sure that the change was smooth and the processes were followed correctly. And that's where you guys were excellent and helped me make sure that happened.
No, and I appreciate that. And to your point, we talked about this earlier, but it's so important. I'll just kind of bring it up again. If you had a friend that was linking to you and you called them and let's just say you couldn't get in touch with them, when you link back, when you click on the link on their website, it's going to go to Elliot's blog. It's going to then do that 301 redirect and land in the right page, right? So you're not going to lose the traffic. However, you are losing about 10% of the SEO value because it is going through that redirect, whereas you want to preserve as much of the SEO value as possible, so then you go out and say, hey, can you just change the link, and then you increase the value of it. But yeah, so that's super important, and again, we appreciate it. We really do. You're an influential blogger in the space, and we were happy to help out and make sure that it was a smooth transition for you and your business. Sure.
Definitely, and I plan on working with you guys again. Probably, I'd say 3, 4, 5 months from now, just to go over the site. Once everything is kind of settled in with Google and whatnot, I want to work with you guys again just to make sure that everything is as it should be, and that the transition was smooth. Because when you do a rebranding, as you know, there are lots of things in the air. In addition to just rebranding, I also did some changes to the look and feel of the website, and we're working on a responsive/fluid theme to make it easier for people to read on various browsers.
Mm-hmm.
So with all the different things happening, I want to make sure that everything is as it should be. And I want to make sure that I implemented all the things you recommended. And if there's still outstanding things that need to get done, I want to make sure those are done. But as of, I actually wrote a blog post about this last week. Traffic from Google has improved from the week prior to the change.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do a very thorough analysis to see how many blog posts I had the week prior versus last week, but the referral traffic is up, which is good. For the week that I made the change, traffic was down. It was down a little bit. I don't know what percentage it was down, but it was noticeably lower, and it seems to have returned in the last week. So at least it's returned and improved.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully it will continue. But I was happy to see that it was back to normal and better than normal.
And you bring up another point, which I forgot, is it's very important to set up Google Webmaster Tools on your website, right? Because right now that's the only way that you can communicate back and forth with Google and request certain things. Like, for instance, if you had a link penalty, you can use what is called the disavow tool to clean up links. You can file a reconsideration request if your site has been hacked and it's, throwing off malware, right? So there's things like that. But to your point, the reason why it was so important to have Google Webmaster Tool set up is because you wanted to go off and request a recrawl of your entire website, right? So I think you're allocated like 10 per month where you can actually request a recrawl, whether it's the whole site or just certain section of the site. So you did that, and Google, that you have a very large site, so Google's not going to crawl everything at once, and it's not going to happen overnight. Like when I was researching it, I was seeing that, you still do have sites that are cached on Google's web, on their index under Elliot's blog, right? But the cache date is before you actually relaunch. So Google will eventually see those pages, and then you'll start to get those indexed, and eventually domain investing will be 100% indexed, and Elliot's blog won't have any more pages that are indexed. But it just takes time. It doesn't happen right overnight.
It's one of those things that I know it's going to take some time to make domaininvesting.com 100% brand, and it was something that I wanted to do. Now was a good time to do it because the new GTLDs, I think, are going to bring people into the domain business and bring more investment and capital into the domain business. And not that I'm all that well known in the domain business, but people know who I am through the blog. And somebody who's coming from outside of the domain industry, who's got no experience but wants to make some investments in the domain space, wouldn't know me from you. And having the domaininvesting.com brand will allow me to reach those people, and kind of adds a level of authority to my blog. So that was the goal of rebranding, and it's more than just changing the URL. There's a lot that goes into it, and I appreciated the fact that you guys were not only giving me good advice, but kind of walking me through and walking my developer through how to do things and what to do. So that was appreciated.
Sure. Well, it was a pleasure, man. Pleasure.
Yeah. I'll see you probably in a couple of months.
Yeah, we'll see you at Traffic again in Vegas, and then I think there's another show, NamesCon. Are you going to be going to that?
I'm wanting to go. I've just got a lot of traveling going on in the next couple of months. I know you do a lot of traveling too, so
Yep.
It's a good thing. But I would say I'm probably going to be at NamesCon. So
Okay, great.
I'll see you.
Well, Elliot, thank you so much. I appreciate the interview, and we're very happy that the site transitioned, as you wanted it, and we're always here to help. So let us know.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
All right.